Mom said. "You're the most worthless child we have." Everyone froze. I stood up and said, "Then quit calling me when you need money." Her expression dropped. Everyone held their breath. Can you imagine being told you're the most useless child at Christmas dinner right after announcing your engagement? What if that brutal, crushing moment was actually the spark that ignited the biggest truth bomb your family had ever heard? A truth that would change everything, forever. Because that's exactly what happened to me last Christmas. My name's Linda, I'm 32, and honestly, I thought I was finally going to have that perfect family Christmas. I mean, I was engaged to David, the love of my life, and I just landed a huge promotion at work, something I'd literally slaved over for 3 years. I was bursting with excitement to share my news, foolishly hoping that maybe, just maybe this time, my mom would finally be proud of me. But what actually unfolded that night didn't just change things between us, it shattered them. And looking back, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. To understand why that Christmas night was so explosive, you need to know a bit about my family. Growing up, I was always the middle child, and in my house, that meant being utterly invisible. My older brother, Michael, was Mom's golden boy. A doctor now, of course, she never lets anyone forget it. Then there was Karen, my younger sister, the precious princess who got away with everything and grew up to be a super successful lawyer. And me, Linda, stuck right in the middle, constantly trying to earn even a fraction of the attention and love they seemed to get effortlessly. From the moment I could understand family dynamics, I knew I had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. Michael got showered with praise for bringing home B's, but I had to maintain straight A's just to get a nod. When Karen threw a tantrum or broke something, it was cute. She was just expressing herself. But if I so much as raised my voice, I was disrespectful, in need of an attitude adjustment. I remember spending countless hours in high school working part-time jobs, tutoring kids, not because we needed the money, but because I desperately thought if I contributed financially, maybe they'd see my value. I saved every penny to buy Mom flowers, jewelry, thoughtful Christmas gifts I'd spend weeks picking out. Michael and Karen, they grabbed something last minute from the mall, and somehow, their gifts always got the biggest smiles and longest hugs. It was baffling. It was heartbreaking. College was supposed to be my fresh start, my chance to truly prove myself in a field I was passionate about. I chose marketing. I loved the creativity, the strategy, the way you could tell a story that connected with people. But when I told my family, my mother's face that felt like I just announced I was dropping out entirely. "Marketing," she'd scoff, her voice dripping with disappointment. "That's not a real career, Linda. That's just playing with pretty pictures. Why can't you be more like Michael, choosing something that helps people? Or like Karen, something that requires real intelligence and makes a difference?" Those words stung deep, but I pushed through, graduated with honors, and landed my first job. I worked my way up, slowly. Extra projects, late nights, early mornings. Every small victory, every client I landed, every successful campaign, I call home, buzzing with excitement. And every single time, the conversation ended the same way. "Oh, that's nice, dear. Did I tell you Michael just got published in another medical journal? Or Karen just won another case? She's really making a name for herself." It was a punch to the gut, every single time. For years, I kept trying. Cards for every holiday, weekly calls, remembering every birthday. When my parents moved at 26, I spent my entire vacation painting walls and organizing boxes while my 2 busy siblings were nowhere to be seen. I even dog-sat their German Shepherd, despite my allergies, spending weekends sneezing and popping antihistamines. Last spring, when Dad had emergency surgery, I was the one who took time off work to drive him, sat with Mom for 6 hours in the waiting room. Michael was in surgery himself that day, Karen was in court. But somehow, I was the one lectured later about not calling them with updates frequently enough. The unfairness was soul-crushing. But the worst part wasn't the lack of recognition. It was the constant comparison. Every conversation, every family dinner, somehow circled back to how much more successful, attractive, accomplished Michael and Karen were. Dinners became exercises in endurance, listening to endless praise for achievements that, honestly, weren't any more impressive than my own, but were treated like Nobel Prize wins because they came from the golden children. Then, last fall, Things in my life finally started clicking into place. David and I had been together for 2 years. He proposed during a mountain getaway in October. The ring was simple, perfect. And more importantly, David saw me in a way my family never had. He celebrated my wins, encouraged my creative projects, never once made me feel like I had to compete for his attention. Around the same time, my company promoted me to senior marketing coordinator. A significant salary bump, my own team, everything I'd worked for. For the first time, I felt genuinely proud. I couldn't wait to share both pieces of news at Christmas. This time, I thought, this time will be different. Christmas morning arrived, just as it always did. The house decorated the same way for 20 years. White lights, familiar ornaments, the same angel topper. The smell of cinnamon rolls and coffee, carols playing softly. I walked in around 10 a.m., arms full of carefully wrapped presents, heart thrumming with nervous excitement. David was with his family, but we'd celebrate later. My engagement ring was safely tucked in my purse. I wanted to tell everyone in person. Dad greeted me at the door with one of his warm bear hugs. He was always the more emotionally available one, the one who actually asked about my job and listened. "There's my marketing genius," he said, taking my gifts. "How's the new position treating you?" I lit up. "Actually, Dad, I have some really exciting news to share with everyone." "Oh yeah? Can't wait to hear it, sweetheart." Then Mom appeared, wearing the red cashmere sweater I'd bought her for her birthday. She looked me up and down with that familiar expression, the one that found fault before I'd even said hello. "Linda, what on earth are you wearing? That green dress makes you look washed out. And your hair, like you just rolled out of bed." "Merry Christmas to you too, Mom," I said, forcing a smile. "I actually spent an hour on my hair." "Well, you should have spent 2, she snapped, turning back to the kitchen. "Karen looks absolutely stunning in her new navy suit. You should ask her where she shops." Karen was indeed in the living room, looking flawless in a tailored navy outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Michael was on the couch, expensive watch gleaming, scrolling through his phone. "Look who finally decided to show up," Karen smirked. "We've been waiting to start presents." I was literally 5 minutes late because I stopped for gas, but nobody was listening. The gift exchange went exactly as expected. Michael gave gift cards, expensive ones, so Mom gushed about how thoughtful he was. Karen bought our parents a weekend spa getaway, earning her 20 minutes of praise. I'd spent weeks on personalized gifts, a vintage medical textbook for Michael, a leather briefcase for Karen, a custom photo album for Mom and Dad, filled with digitized family photos. "Oh, how nice," Mom said, flipping through it quickly. "This must have taken you some time." "About 40 hours, I said. "I scanned and restored old photos, designed the layouts." "Michael, show everyone that new watch your colleague gave you." And just like that, the conversation moved on. Dad squeezed my shoulder, whispering, "This is beautiful, Linda." "Thank you." But the moment was gone. As the morning turned to afternoon, more family arrived. The house filled with laughter, and I found myself in the kitchen, helping Mom with dinner. "The turkey needs to come out in 20 minutes, she instructed, not looking up from her mashing. "And someone needs to set the table." "Where's Karen?" "She's talking to Grandma Eleanor." "Well, she shouldn't have to worry about kitchen work. She works so hard during the week." I bit my tongue. I worked just as hard, my nerves frayed as dinner approached. I'd planned to make my announcement during dessert, when everyone was relaxed. I kept touching the ring box in my purse, reminding myself this was good news. But watching Mom light up every time Michael mentioned a case or Karen a court victory, I wondered if I was setting myself up for yet another disappointment. Dinner was served at 3 p.m. sharp. My mother's finest china, the unspoken hierarchy that always put me between my youngest cousin and Grandpa's empty chair. The conversation flowed, familiar topics. Michael's expanding practice, Karen's promotion, my cousin Janet's wedding plans. I contributed when spoken to, laughed at Uncle Frank's jokes, complimented Aunt Susan's haircut, all while waiting for my moment. "So, Linda," Grandma Eleanor said during a lull, "are you still working at that little advertising company?" "Marketing company, Grandma, and yes, I am. Actually, I have some exciting news about that." Before I could continue, Mom jumped in. "Linda thinks making pretty pictures is a real career. I keep telling her she should go back to school for something more substantial, like nursing." Marketing is a real career, Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice even. It requires a lot of strategy and analysis. I just got promoted to senior coordinator, leading my own team. Oh, that's wonderful, honey, Aunt Susan said kindly. Congratulations. Thank you. And actually, I have even bigger news. I reached into my purse, pulled out the small velvet box. My heart pounded, so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. This was it. David proposed. I announced, opening the box to reveal the solitaire ring. We're engaged. The reaction wasn't what I'd hoped for. A moment of silence, then polite congratulations. Dad's face broke into a genuine smile. Grandma squeezed my hand. But Mom's expression remained unchanged, almost bored. When did this happen? Karen asked. In October. We went to the mountains, and he proposed on a hike. It was perfect. October. Mom's voice was sharp. You've been engaged for 2 months, and you're just telling us now? That's just typical of you, Linda. Always so secretive, always keeping things to yourself. No wonder we never know what's going on in your life. I felt the familiar sting of criticism, disguised as concern. I'm not secretive, Mom. I call every week. I just wanted this to be special. What does David do again? Michael asked, even though I told him 3 times. He's a high school English teacher. A teacher? Mom repeated, dripping with disappointment. Well, I suppose that's stable employment, at least. The way she said it, it screamed. Not impressive enough. Not successful enough. Not good enough for her daughter. Never mind that David was kind, brilliant, funny, and treated me like I was the most important person in his world. He's a wonderful man, Grandma said firmly. When do we get to meet him properly? Soon, I hope, I said. He's with his family for Christmas, but we're planning dinner next month. I hope he knows what he's getting into, Karen said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Linda's always been the difficult one in the family. I'm not difficult, I protested, but Mom was already nodding in agreement. Linda has always been challenging, she said, as if I weren't even there. She's never quite figured out how to make things easy on herself or anyone else. The words hit me like a physical blow. But for the first time, instead of shrinking back, instead of making excuses, I felt something different. It was anger, yes, but more than that, it was a wave of clarity. 32 years of suppressed frustration and hurt, finally finding its voice. Well, I think it's wonderful news, Dad said, raising his glass. To Linda and David, may you be very happy together. A few people half-heartedly raised their glasses, but the moment felt forced, awkward. The conversation quickly moved on, and I sat there, ring box still in my hands, feeling smaller and more insignificant than ever. As dessert was served, Mom launched into Michael's latest achievements. Featured in a medical journal, invited to speak at a Chicago conference, considered for a position at University Hospital. Each accomplishment described in glowing detail, her pride radiating. And Karen, she continued, just won the biggest case of her career. 6-figure settlement, and the senior partners are talking about fast-tracking her to full partner. That's amazing, I said, genuinely meaning it. Congratulations, Karen. Thanks, she mumbled, attention already back on her phone. I sat there, listening, waiting for someone to circle back to my engagement or promotion. It never happened. It was as if I'd never spoken, as if my news didn't matter. That's when Mom looked directly at me and said the words that would change everything between us forever. You know, Linda, I've been thinking about this engagement of yours, and I have to be honest. I'm worried about David. I mean, what kind of man proposes to you? The table went quiet. Everyone, even my cousins, looked up. What do you mean? I asked, a cold dread washing over me, knowing exactly what she meant. Well, let's be realistic. You're 32. You work in a job that barely pays the bills. You live in that tiny apartment, and you've never really accomplished anything significant. You're the most useless child we have. I just hope David realizes what he's signing up for before it's too late. The silence that followed was deafening. Every pair of eyes was on me waiting. Aunt Susan looked horrified. Dad shook his head in disbelief. Even Michael and Karen seemed shocked by the sheer cruelty of it. But this time, instead of the usual tears, instead of the usual shame, a fire ignited in my gut. It was pure, raw anger. And in that anger, a shocking, undeniable clarity. I stood up slowly, my hands trembling, and looked my mother directly in the eyes. Then stop calling me when you need money, I said. My voice was steady, clear, and her face fell. The silence after my words was absolute. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hall, the distant Christmas music. My mother's face transformed from confident superiority to something I'd never seen before, genuine shock, mixed with what looked like panic. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice stripped of its earlier authority. "I'm talking about the $1,500 I've been sending you every month for the past 2 years to cover your car payments because Dad's business was struggling," I announced. "I'm talking about the $3,000 I gave you last spring when he needed surgery, and your insurance wouldn't cover all the costs. I'm talking about the $2,000 I sent to help pay for Karen's bar exam fees because she'd already spent her trust fund on that trip to Europe." I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and opened my banking app, my fingers surprisingly steady. "Want to see the receipts?" I held up the screen. "Because I have them all right here. Every transfer, every check, every emergency loan that somehow never got paid back." Aunt Susan stared, mouth slightly open. Uncle Frank had put down his fork, listening intently. Grandma Eleanor was nodding slowly, as if puzzle pieces were finally clicking into place. "Linda," Dad started, but I wasn't finished. "Remember last Christmas when Michael's student loans went into default because his new practice wasn't bringing in enough money yet? Who do you think paid those off? It wasn't Mom and Dad, because they were still recovering from Dad's medical bills. It was me. $4,000 I'd been saving for a down payment on a house." Michael's face had gone pale. "Linda, I didn't know." "Of course, you didn't know," I shot back. "Because Mom made me promise not to tell anyone. She said it would embarrass you, that I should just consider it my contribution to the family." My contribution, as if I haven't been contributing my entire adult life. I turned back to my mother, who was opening and closing her mouth, trying to find words. "You want to know what kind of man proposes to someone like me? The kind who sees that I've been single-handedly keeping this family financially afloat while working my supposedly meaningless job and living in my supposedly pathetic apartment. The kind who recognizes that maybe, just maybe, I've been sacrificing my own financial security and dreams to take care of everyone else." "I never asked you to," Mom began weakly. "You absolutely did ask." I spat, my voice rising. "You called me crying about the car payments. You called me panicking about Dad's surgery. You called me begging for help with Karen's fees. And every single time I helped. Because that's what families do. But apparently, that's what the useless child does, while the successful ones get all the credit and none of the responsibility." Karen finally spoke up, her voice small. "I didn't know you paid for my bar exam. Because I wasn't supposed to tell you. Just like I wasn't supposed to tell anyone about the money I've been lending Mom and Dad, or the payment I made on Michael's loans, or the countless other times I've bailed this family out of financial trouble." I opened my banking app again, reading out actual numbers and dates. September 15th, 2022, $1,500 to Patricia Walsh for car payment. October 3rd, $1,500 to Patricia Walsh for car payment. November 7th, $2,000 to Robert Walsh for medical expenses. December 19th, $1,500 to Patricia Walsh for car payment. Dad was staring at Mom with an expression I'd never seen before. "Patricia, is this true?" "It's not what it sounds like," she said quickly. "Linda was just helping out temporarily while we got back on our feet." "Temporarily?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "It's been 2 years, Mom. 2 years of monthly payments. 2 years of me prioritizing your financial stability over my own. 2 years of me living paycheck to paycheck while you drove around in a car I was paying for, complaining about how unsuccessful your useless daughter is." Grandma Eleanor reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Honey, why didn't you tell any of us about this?" "Because I thought if I could just help enough, if I could just prove my value to this family in some way, maybe I'd finally earn the love and respect that Michael and Karen seem to get for free. I thought if I could be useful, even if it was just financially, maybe Mom would stop looking at me like I was a disappointment." The tears I'd been holding back for years were finally coming. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of finally speaking a truth I'd carried alone for so long. "You want to know what David sees in me?" I continued, my voice growing stronger. He sees someone who's been working 2 jobs to support her family while they belittle her career. He sees someone who's been giving up her own dreams and financial goals to make sure everyone else in her family is okay. He sees someone who's been the real backbone of his family while being treated like she's worthless. Michael was shaking his head. Linda, I had no idea. If I'd known you were the one who paid off my loans. You'd what, Michael? I cut him off. You'd have treated me with basic respect. You'd have defended me when Mom made her snide comments. Because that's all I ever wanted. Not gratitude, not praise, just basic human decency. I turned to Karen, who was staring down at her plate. And you? Do you have any idea how many times I've covered for you? Not just financially, but in every other way? When you were too hung over to help Mom move, who do you think spent her weekend packing boxes? When you were too busy to visit Dad in the hospital, who do you think sat with him for hours? Linda, Dad said quietly, I'm so sorry. I had no idea your mother was asking you for money. She made me promise not to tell you. She said it would hurt your pride, and that since you were the most financially stable one, it was your responsibility to help. Funny how I went from being most useless to most financially stable, depending on what she needed from me. My mother finally found her voice again. You're being dramatic, Linda. Families help each other. That's what we do. No, Mom, I shouted, slamming my hand on the table. What families do is support each other emotionally and treat each other with respect. What you do is take my money while telling everyone how worthless I am. What you do is use me as a financial safety net while treating me like an embarrassment. I stood up, pushing my chair back. Well, congratulations. You're about to find out exactly how useless I really am, because as of today, the Bank of Linda is permanently closed. The aftermath of my revelation was instant, chaotic. As soon as I announced I was done being the family's financial safety net, multiple conversations erupted simultaneously. Aunt Susan demanded to know how long this had been going on. Uncle Frank grilled Dad about the money. Grandma Eleanor looked at Mom with profound disappointment. Linda, wait! Mom cried, standing up as I grabbed my purse and coat. Let's talk about this privately. There's no need to air our family business in front of everyone. Our family business? I spun back around. You mean the family business where you humiliate me in front of these same people every chance you get? The family business where you announce to everyone that I'm the most useless child you have? I think they're entitled to know the truth about how this family really operates. You're being vindictive, she accused, but her voice was shaking. I'm being honest, I declared. For the first time in my adult life, I'm being completely honest about what's been happening. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why. My cousin Janet spoke up. Linda, are you serious about the money? You've really been supporting them financially. Dead serious. I can show you bank statements going back years if you want proof. Dad stared at Mom, a mixture of confusion and anger on his face. Patricia, we need to talk. Right now. Not in front of everyone, she hissed. Why not? He shot back. You had no problem discussing Linda's failures in front of everyone. You had no problem announcing to the entire table that she's useless. So why is it suddenly inappropriate to discuss the truth? Michael finally spoke, his voice quiet. Linda, about my student loans. I genuinely didn't know. I thought Mom and Dad had helped me out. I know you didn't know, I said, and I meant it. None of you knew, because I was specifically told not to tell you. But Michael, can I ask you something? In all the years we've been adults, have you ever once asked me if I needed help with anything? Have you ever inquired about my finances, my career struggles, my personal life beyond the bare minimum? He was quiet for a long moment. No, he finally admitted. I guess I assumed you were doing fine. You assumed I was doing fine because it was easier than actually paying attention to my life. I exclaimed, just like it was easier for Karen to assume someone else would handle the family emergencies. And easier for Mom to assume I'd always be there to bail everyone out while she criticized everything about me. Karen finally looked up from her plate. I don't understand why you didn't just say no if you didn't want to help. Because I did want to help. I cried. I wanted to help because I love this family, despite everything. I wanted to help because I thought maybe if I proved my value in some tangible way, I'd finally be treated like I mattered. But I see now that no amount of financial support was ever going to change how you all see me." Grandma Eleanor cleared her throat, and the room went silent. When she spoke, everyone listened. "Patricia," she said, her voice stern, "I am deeply disappointed in you. This young woman has been sacrificing her own financial security to help this family, and you've been treating her like she's worthless. That's not just ungrateful, it's cruel." "Mother, you don't understand the whole situation," Mom started. "I understand enough." Grandma cut her off. "I understand that Linda has been working 2 jobs to support herself and apparently half this family, while you've been telling everyone who'd listen that she's not good enough. I understand that she just announced her engagement, which should be one of the happiest moments of her life, and instead of celebrating with her, you used it as an opportunity to tear her down." The room was silent, save for Mom's ragged breathing. I'd never seen her called out so directly by her own mother. "And another thing," Grandma continued, "I've watched this girl grow up, and she's never been anything but kind, generous, and hardworking. If she's the most useless child you have, Patricia, then you have no idea how to measure a person's worth." Aunt Susan nodded emphatically. "I have to agree with Mom. Linda, I had no idea you were dealing with all of this. I always wondered why you seemed so stressed during family gatherings." "I wasn't stressed," I said quietly. "I was exhausted. Emotionally, financially, physically exhausted from trying to be enough for a family that had already decided I never would be." Mom made one last attempt to regain control. "Linda, you're making this sound much worse than it is. We're family. We help each other. And I never said you were worthless. You said I was the most useless child you have," I countered. "In front of everyone, after I just told you I was engaged. What exactly would you call that?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "You know what, Mom? It doesn't matter anymore. I'm done trying to earn your approval. I'm done sacrificing my own happiness and financial security for people who don't even see me as a real person. I'm done being the family safety net while being treated like the family disappointment." I walked toward the door, then turned back one last time. "My wedding is going to be beautiful. David and I are going to build a wonderful life together. And we're going to do it without the constant criticism and emotional manipulation that I've been accepting as normal for the past 32 years. Anyone who wants to be part of that life, with respect and kindness, is welcome. Anyone who doesn't can keep my phone number for emergencies, but don't expect me to answer." And with that, I walked out of my childhood home, leaving behind a table full of shocked faces and a mother who was finally experiencing what it felt like to be the one left speechless. The week following Christmas was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. My phone started ringing before I even made it home that evening, and it didn't stop for days. But for the first time, I wasn't answering every call immediately. I wasn't dropping everything to manage other people's emotions. David had flown back from Portland 2 days early when I called him, sobbing, from my car in my parents' driveway. He found me on my couch at 11 p.m., still in my Christmas dress, staring at my buzzing phone. "I can't believe I actually did that," I kept saying. "I can't believe I finally said all of that out loud." "I can," he said, pulling me close. "I've been waiting for you to stand up to them for 2 years. I just didn't want to push because I knew you had to get there on your own. But what if I was wrong? What if I was too harsh?" "Linda," he said gently, "you've been paying your mother's car payment for 2 years while she told people you were useless. There's no universe in which you were too harsh." The messages poured in. Dad called first, his voice heavy with genuine regret. "Linda, honey, I had no idea your mother was asking you for money. I'm so sorry. If I'd known—" "Dad," I interrupted, "it's not just about the money. It's about the way she's treated me my entire life. The money was just the final straw." "I know, sweetheart," he sighed. "I've been thinking a lot about that since you left. And you're right. I should have stood up for you more over the years. I should have said something." It was the first real apology I'd ever received from anyone in my family, and it meant more than I could express. Michael called the next day. "Linda, I feel terrible about the loan situation. I want to pay you back." "It's not about paying me back, Michael," I said. "It's about the fact that for all these years, you've been perfectly happy to assume that someone else would handle family problems while you focused on your career. You never once asked if I needed help or support." "You're right," he said quietly. I guess I always saw you as the strong one, the one who had everything figured out. I was the one who couldn't say no, I clarified. There's a difference. Karen took 3 days to call, and when she did, she was defensive. I don't understand why you're being so dramatic about this, Linda. Families help each other out. It's not like anyone forced you to give us money. Karen, do you remember what you said to me at dinner? You said I was the difficult one in the family. Do you have any idea how that felt, coming right after Mom called me useless? I was just joking around, she protested. It wasn't a joke to me. It never is. Do you realize that between you and Michael, I can't remember the last time either of you said something genuinely kind about me? The last time you supported me or celebrated something good happening in my life. She was quiet for a long moment. I guess I never thought about it that way. That's the problem, I said, my voice cracking. None of you think about it. You take my support for granted while treating me like I'm the burden. My mother, predictably, was the most persistent. 6 calls on December 26th alone, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. Linda, this is ridiculous. Call me back so we can discuss this like adults. Linda, you're being incredibly selfish. Your father is upset, and this is affecting the whole family. Linda, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this attitude needs to stop. We're your family. On December 28th, she tried a different approach. Linda, honey, I think I may have spoken too harshly at dinner. Maybe we can work something out about the money situation. But it wasn't until December 30th that she finally called and said the words I'd been waiting 32 years to hear. Linda, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I almost didn't answer. I'd been screening her calls for days, and David had encouraged me to take my time. But something about the 10th ring made me pick up. Hello, Mom. Linda, thank God. Please don't hang up. I need to talk to you. I'm listening. Your father and I have been talking, and I think I owe you an apology. A real one. I waited. What I said at dinner was unforgivable. You're not useless. You're the opposite of useless. You've been. God, Linda, you've been holding this family together, and I've been treating you terribly. It was the closest thing to a genuine apology I'd ever received from her. But I wasn't ready to let my guard down completely. Mom, it's not just what you said at dinner. It's been a pattern my entire life. The constant criticism, the comparisons to Michael and Karen, the way you dismiss my career and my accomplishments. I know, she said, her voice shaking. I know, and I don't have a good excuse for it. I think maybe I saw myself in you, and I was harder on you because of it. What do you mean? I was the middle child, too. I know what it's like to feel invisible, and instead of protecting you from that feeling, I think I made it worse. I think I pushed you harder because I wanted you to be stronger than I was. It wasn't a complete explanation, and certainly not an excuse, but it was the first time my mother had ever shown me any real vulnerability or self-awareness. The money stops, Mom. All of it. No more car payments, no more emergency loans, no more bailing anyone out. I understand. You're right to stop. We never should have put that burden on you. And the criticism stops, too. I'm not going to tolerate being belittled anymore, especially in front of other people. Okay, I'll try to do better. Don't try, Mom. Do better. Because if you can't, then David and I will build our life without this family's involvement. It was an ultimatum, but it felt necessary. For the first time in my life, I was setting real boundaries with consequences I was prepared to enforce. 3 months later, my life looked completely different. The constant financial stress was gone, replaced by something I'd never experienced: actual savings. For the first time since college, I had money left over at the end of each month. David and I opened a joint savings account and started planning not just our wedding, but our entire future. The emotional change was even more dramatic. Without the constant weight of family drama and financial obligations, I felt lighter, more confident, more like myself. My performance at work improved noticeably. My boss noticed. "You seem different lately," she said during my quarterly review. "More focused, more assertive. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." I was doing something I'd never done before, prioritizing my own well-being. The family dynamics shifted dramatically once the financial safety net was removed. Dad, it turned out, had been completely unaware of the extent of Mom's borrowing. When he discovered the full scope of it, he was furious. 2 years, Patricia? You've been taking money from our daughter for 2 years without telling me." They ended up going to financial counseling, something that probably should have happened years earlier. Dad took a part-time consulting job, and Mom finally admitted they'd been living beyond their means. Michael and Karen, meanwhile, were forced to confront their own assumptions. Michael called me 6 weeks after Christmas. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," he told me, "about how I never asked if you needed help. And you're right. I was so focused on my own problems that I never considered you might have your own." "I appreciate you saying that," I replied. "I want to do better," he said. "And I want to start by asking, is there anything you need help with? Anything I can do to support you?" It was such a simple question, but it was the first time any of my siblings had ever asked it. We ended up having a 2-hour conversation about my career goals, my relationship with David, my plans for the future. For the first time in our adult lives, Michael seemed genuinely interested in my life as a person, rather than just a family obligation. Karen took longer to come around. She was still defensive about the money, and seemed to view my boundary setting as a personal attack. But even she eventually started to shift her perspective, especially after a conversation with Grandma Eleanor. Our formidable matriarch had apparently given both of my siblings quite the talking to. "Your sister has been sacrificing for this family, while you two were building your careers," she told them. "The least you can do is treat her with the respect she deserves." My relationship with my mother remained the most complicated. She was clearly trying to change, but decades of ingrained patterns don't disappear overnight. She'd catch herself mid-criticism and apologize, or make an effort to ask about my work in a way that didn't sound dismissive. It felt forced at first, but gradually, it started to feel more genuine. The real test came when David and I started planning our wedding. I'd been dreading the inevitable commentary, the attempts to control. But to my surprise, Mom mostly kept her opinions to herself. When she did offer suggestions, she prefaced them with, "Just an idea," or "only if you think it would work." "I like the photographer you chose," she said during one of our planning sessions. "The samples you showed me are beautiful." It was such a normal, supportive comment that I almost didn't know how to respond. This was what healthy family interaction was supposed to look like. Dad, on the other hand, threw himself into wedding planning with an enthusiasm I hadn't expected. He offered to help with costs, insisted on walking me down the aisle, and spent hours researching venues and vendors with me. It was as if he was trying to make up for years of standing by. "I'm so proud of you," he told me one afternoon as we sampled cakes. "Not just for standing up to your mother, but for building such a good life for yourself. David's a lucky man." Coming from my father, those words meant everything. The biggest surprise was how many other family members reached out once they learned the full story. Aunt Susan started calling regularly just to check in. Cousin Janet offered to help with wedding planning. Even some more distant relatives made efforts to connect with me. "I always sensed there was tension," Aunt Susan explained. "But I never realized how bad it was. Your mother has always been intense, but I didn't know she was being so unfair to you." It turned out that several family members had noticed the dynamic over the years, but hadn't felt comfortable intervening. My Christmas outburst had given them permission to address what they'd been seeing but ignoring. The most meaningful change was in my relationship with David's family. Without the constant drain of my own family's drama, I was able to invest more emotional energy in building relationships with his parents and siblings. They welcomed me with an openness and warmth I'd never experienced. And for the first time, I understood what healthy family dynamics actually looked like. "Your family is so normal," I told David after a Sunday dinner where no one criticized anyone, and everyone seemed genuinely happy to be together. "Yours can be too," he said. "It just takes time and boundaries." He was right. Slowly, carefully, with clear expectations and consequences, some of my family relationships were beginning to heal. Not all of them, and not completely, but enough to give me hope that the future could be different from the past. 6 months after that Christmas dinner, David and I were married in a small, beautiful ceremony at a historic inn. The guest list was carefully curated, including only people who had shown genuine support for our relationship and respect for both of us. My father walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes. My grandmother sat in the front row, beaming with pride. My mother was there too, dressed beautifully and behaving perfectly, though I could see the effort it was taking her. Michael and Karen both attended and even seemed genuinely happy for us. But the people who mattered most were the ones who had supported me unconditionally: David's family, my Aunt Susan and Cousin Janet, and my longtime friends who had watched me struggle for years and were thrilled to see me finally standing up for myself. "You look radiant," my grandmother whispered, hugging me after the ceremony. "Not just beautiful, but truly happy. That's what I've been waiting to see." During the reception, my father gave a speech that brought me to tears. "Linda has always been the heart of our family," he said, "even when we didn't appreciate her properly. She's kind, generous, hardworking, and loyal to a fault. David, you're not just marrying a wonderful woman, you're marrying someone who will move heaven and earth for the people she loves. I just hope you never take that for granted the way some of us have." It was his public acknowledgement of the years of imbalance, and it meant everything to me. Even my mother managed something appropriate during her brief remarks. "Linda, I'm sorry it took me so long to see what an amazing daughter I have. I hope you and David build a beautiful life together." It wasn't a complete repair, but it was progress. The most important moment of the day, though, came during our first dance. As David and I swayed to the music, surrounded by the people who truly cared about us, I realized I felt something I'd never felt before at a family gathering. Completely, genuinely happy. "No regrets," David whispered in my ear. "None," I said, and I meant it completely. The months that followed were a revelation. Marriage to David was everything I'd hoped for and more. We bought a house together, using the money I'd been able to save once I stopped subsidizing my family. We traveled. We entertained friends. We built traditions that were ours alone. My career flourished in ways I'd never imagined possible. Without the constant emotional drain of family drama, I had energy to invest in my work that I'd never had before. I led successful campaigns, built strong relationships with clients, and earned the promotion my boss had hinted at. The girl who had been called useless was now running her own department. Some family relationships continued to improve gradually. My father and I developed a genuine friendship. Michael made real efforts to be present in my life, calling to check in, even asking for my advice. My grandmother became one of my closest confidants. My relationship with my mother remained complicated but functional. She still struggled with her criticism, but she caught herself more often, made real efforts to be supportive. When I told her I was considering an MBA, she surprised me by saying, "That sounds like a wonderful opportunity. You'd be excellent at that." It wasn't the enthusiastic support I might have gotten from Michael or Karen, but it was respectful and encouraging, which was more than I'd ever expected from her. Karen and I found a cordial but distant equilibrium. We were polite at family gatherings, but we never developed the close relationship I'd hoped for. That was okay, though. I'd learned that not all family relationships can be fixed, and that's not necessarily a reflection of personal failure. The most profound change was internal. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't constantly seeking approval or trying to prove my worth. I knew who I was, what I'd accomplished, and what I brought to my relationships. David's love and respect had shown me what it felt like to be valued for who I truly was, and I'd learned to value myself the same way. One evening, almost a year after our wedding, David and I were having dinner when my phone rang. It was my mother, which wasn't unusual by then, but something in her voice was different. "Linda, I need to tell you something," she said. "Your father and I were at the grocery store today, and I ran into Mrs. Henderson. She was asking about you, and I found myself telling her about your promotion and your new house and how proud I am of you. And then I realized, I don't think I've ever actually told you that." "Told me what, Mom?" "That I'm proud of you. That I've always been proud of you, even when I was too stubborn or too focused on what I thought success should look like to admit it. You're an incredible woman, Linda. You're kind and strong and successful and generous, and I'm sorry it took me so long to say that out loud." It was the conversation I'd been waiting for my entire life, and it came at a time when I no longer needed it to feel complete. But that made it even more meaningful because it felt genuine rather than desperate. "Thank you, Mom," I said. "That means a lot. I love you, sweetheart. I should have been saying that more often, too. I love you, too." After I hung up, David looked at me with a smile. "How does it feel?" "Good," I said, surprised to realize I meant it. "It feels really good, but also, I think I would have been okay either way." And that was the real victory. Not that my family had finally learned to treat me with respect. though that was wonderful. The real victory was that I'd learned to respect myself enough to demand better treatment and to build a life that didn't depend on their approval for my happiness. I'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is to stop accepting unacceptable behavior. I'd learned that financial independence and emotional independence go hand in hand. Most importantly, I'd learned that the family you choose can be just as important as the family you're born into, and that surrounding yourself with people who see your worth doesn't make you selfish. It makes you whole. The little girl who had spent her childhood trying to earn love had grown into a woman who knew she was worthy of love just as she was. And that made all the difference in the world. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took your support for granted? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone else find the courage to speak their truth. Wishing you all the strength to know your worth and the courage to demand the respect you deserve.